Welcome everybody to 6 years of the Downtown UX Meetup. It's kind of wild to say that, but it's amazing that it's true. And it's also amazing that in this particular year in 2020, we've only missed a single month. There have been a couple of months over our 6 years that we haven't had meetups, but almost every single month for the past 6 years, we've had at least one event. And it's just been really wild and wonderful to be on that ride with you all. So as usual, we'll begin with my computer freezing and then me sharing from all of us. I know it's unusual times right now, and just from all of us in the DOUX organizer group and community, we hope that you all are doing well. For housekeeping, I think everybody's mostly got their cameras on already, but as usual, this event being virtual becomes a little bit more personal and connected when we can see each other. We're not actually going to have the slide deck up for most of this, so we'll kind of switch back to that community view here in a second. So if you're comfortable, please turn your camera on. If you want to interject, feel free to use the raise your hand button control. It's like between chat and the users panel. And then also feel free to chime in the comments if you have any thoughts while other folks are talking. So yeah, as I mentioned, we are celebrating 6 years, and for our 6-year anniversary, we're going to actually just kind of talk a little bit about the past 6 years with the organizers, including one previous organizer who is joining us as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about the future. So here are our organizers. The only organizer from our past 6 years who is actually unfortunately missing tonight is Juliana, but otherwise all 6 of us are here. Janae is our organizer emeritus. She will always be an organizer for DOUX, even if she's not still participating. And anybody else who is present and wants to get involved with this community, involved with helping to make these events happen every month for another many years, always, feel free to raise your hand and to speak up. This happens certainly not because of me every month. It happens because we've got an amazing organizer team. So if you have any interest in kind of being a part of that, whether that's just speaking on one of the months, presenting something, sharing some of your knowledge, or helping to kind of shape the meetup and help us to make it happen every month, definitely let us know. So with that, so this is another thing that we actually start every meetup off with, which is our mission statement. And that is that we exist to create opportunities for anyone to learn and share knowledge about the field of user experience. And I always like to say that this community, this meetup, it wouldn't be what it was without you being here. So thank you so much for helping to make this what it is. And even though we've been meeting virtually, we have for most of our life been sponsored by Tech Systems. They've been a great partner to us, and I'm sure when we are back in person, we'll be able to enjoy pizza and beer from them again. All right, here we are. So this month, a great friend, really cool person, Avery Smith, is going to be moderating our conversation about the DOUX meetup. So he is a design director at Intrepid Networks. He's also the vice president of AIG Orlando and the admin or the Orlando designers community, which I'm also involved with. And he does a lot of great work there. If you're not in the Orlando designers Slack group and you want to join, just type in Orlando designers Slack in Google, it'll come up, or it's orlandodesigners.info. But that's a great place to join the Orlando design community. Thanks for helping to lead the conversation, Avery. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you and stop sharing my screen.
Awesome.
Maybe.
Thank you very much, Matt. All right, and I will just share my screen. Great. Can everyone see my Chrome window okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. All righty. Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be involved in your anniversary. I know that the DOUX was a big part of me kind of coming out of my shell professionally when I was feeling, really isolated from people, and during a time when I was working remote a lot. So I really appreciate your meetup being there during this time where people could be feeling the same way. So, so yeah, with that, let's keep this social and interactive. As Matt mentioned, feel free to raise your hand, which you can do by clicking the participants button, I believe, or you can add them here in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them during the course of the meetup. Alrighty, so we'll just get the questions started for our panel. So first up, why did you choose to begin volunteering with the meetup of DOUX? And I will direct this one to Janae.
The short answer is I met Matt and he asked me, hey, do you want to be a co-organizer? And I was like, sure, why not? The reason is because I believe in the Orlando designers community. I really enjoyed being able to talk shop with folks, even outside of work. So really understanding the different challenges that a UX designer can go through and being able to share how we can better align and really develop our craft. From there, it was just really enjoying the fact that I can connect with folks outside of work, really getting to know people as part of the community and just being able to share what I know.
That's great. Any other panelists have answers for that?
Yeah, I can go. I kind of have a similar story where Matt kind of just was like, hey, do you want to be an organizer? And it happened. But actually, one thing about like this meetup in particular, when I was first, looking for user experience roles, in the beginning, I had a very small bubble and I didn't know anyone in the industry. And I knew that kind of the people that I was talking to are like, you want to move to places like Atlanta or New York, like Orlando is not the place that you're going to find a UX job. And that really stinks to hear when you love where you live. And so one thing about DOUX is one of our goals is we want to make Orlando a better place for UX. And so that's kind of one of the things that, I was very connected to. Like, I want to be a part of what's going to make this community better. And I want this to be a place where people are going to be proud to be UX designers and want to move here to be a part of this community too.
And that really ties in to my reason. From 2005 to 2010, I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, while my wife was getting a graduate degree at USC, and I felt so disconnected from the rest of the community locally. I knew the people I worked with, and that was it. And I really wanted to meet other people outside of work, so I started a meetup that was similar to DOUX. It was called Converge. Well, it was just a local web design and development meetup. But then in 2010, I moved to Atlanta, which there was so many meetups that you could go to that you could pick 4 or 5 a week that you wanted to go to, and very specialized meetups. And really it was just a matter of attending. I didn't have to worry about organizing a meetup anymore. And my wife and I lived in Atlanta for 5 years, and we had a family there, and we decided we want to move closer to home, which for us is Vero Beach. We're both from Florida originally. And so we were looking for where to move back to, and looking in Orlando and Tampa and Jacksonville. And, as I was looking for places, looking for which city we wanted to move back to, I was also looking at local communities. And so I actually found DOUX when we hadn't quite decided that Orlando was where we were going to move back to. And there was a few other design meetups in Orlando at the time. There was one called Design with a Purpose. There was Design Orlando at the time. So I was like, oh, it seems like there's a great community here. Moved down here, ended up working with Matt at Power DMS, and was not officially an organizer for the whole time that I was at Power DMS, because I thought it'd be a little weird for me to join as an organizer, but enjoyed helping set up the tables and things like that before meetups. So I just love being a part of communities of practice outside of work and outside of the people that you work with every day, and getting to hear what kind of problems are being solved in other companies and in other design situations. And it just always helps grow my exposure to what's going on in the industry, and I've always enjoyed it. Officially started organizing right after I left Power DMS, is when I officially joined as one of the organizer crew.
Yeah, and I know I didn't really start volunteering because I kicked off this whole shindig, but my answer is actually that it was pretty selfish. I wanted to like hang out with you all, and I had my job title had just changed from developer to UX designer in like summer of 2014. I'd been doing UX but like finally was able to kind of set aside the development tasks and do design full time. And I'd been thinking about starting a meetup for probably a year, and I think it was a lot of like lack of confidence that was keeping me from doing it. And eventually I was just like, whatever, let's just do this thing. And I just really wanted to like have that time to be able to like talk shop with somebody. And you can only really like talk about your industry and your work so much with your partner before it's like, okay, that's enough. So yeah, it's just great being able to connect with other designers and meet other people that were interested in this practice,
Good question. I've been in the design Orlando design market a little over a decade now. And I remember we had a lot of little startups, a lot of little startup meetups that would come up here and there, and some of them will last a little while. We had one in Coast School for some time. And then I found, the DOUX, right? And I joined that one, and it was a community that was far more active. To me, the original goal when I went to meetups is because I learned things, right? I just didn't have like a finger on the industry. And I always been here, so I started going to them and learning different things. So it was pretty cool. And then I started legit like meeting people and having this good relationship. Like when I came into this meetup, you were, oh yeah, Nardo. I was like, that's cool, and that's why I do it. I think it's a very social thing to do with designers, right? Because in my day, I don't really talk to designers other than my coworkers and stuff like that. So I think that's really cool. We share needs. Yeah.
Absolutely. Abhishek, did you have any answers for this question?
Yeah, and I think everyone answers touch upon my own answer. I think it is part of the community. So I joined Party MS. I came to Orlando to join Party MS. And one of the things that was just super lucky, or like my first interaction with the meetup was when I came here for an interview. I met a lot of really cool people, really liked the job prospect. So I'm like, this is a great space. They've got some really cool designers. And I was in college and I had this naive idea that no one got design. And I come to this really cool meetup where everyone is talking about all the things I'm learning in school. So I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I definitely want to be part of this, or at least go to all the meetups now that I get to work here. And I pretty much did that for the first 2 years, or I think a year and a half of knowing downtown UX. I wasn't an organizer. I helped with the tables and kind of was part of the events. One thing that kept nagging me, or something that just kept hitting me throughout those years, was I was so fortunate to come into a place where everyone else has done so much work, Matt, Janae, that there is this environment, there is this culture of talking about design, coming to meetups, and they've done so much work to create this space for it. And I get to be very fortunately be able to use it. So around the time when I think Jason left, there was an opportunity. I think again, Matt tapped and asked if that's something I'd like to do. And I really wanted to give back. So I felt like I've been given so much out of this meetup. The least I can do is kind of help sustain and keep it going for however long I can. I don't really think I'll ever be able to really give back everything I've learned, but hopefully someone else can kind of take away the same experience that I had. That would be, I think, in some ways, pass along what I got out of it.
Very cool. Awesome. Anyone else have any thoughts on that first question?
Yeah, I'll jump into. You know, one of the things I had been active with some other meetups, but not like helping, like kind of be an organizer, and I just felt like some of them didn't really have a lot of focus or purpose. But when you came into this one, it felt like it had real purpose, and I really liked that. And it seemed like the more we met each other and got to know each other, it was clear that we were comfortable having an agenda and having things that we wanted to discuss and having voices, individual voices and a group voice. And I loved that we got together and planned things out. And that to me really kept it going for me. I thought that was a really positive piece of this group. I enjoyed that a lot.
Very nice. Thank you, everyone. We have a really good question in the chat that I wanted to ask from Cody. Does anyone have a favorite or memorable mentor / mentee moment from DOUX?
I can take this one. I think this was about definitely before COVID. I think about 6 months before, when we were still having in-person events. So there was another person in this event, and surprisingly, he was from my city back in India, like really like another person from my country. So we were able to hit it off, become really good friends just from that cultural aspect of it. And then over time, he was in full sail trying to get a job out of, and that's one of the reasons why he was coming to the meetup. So I met him for lunch a couple of times, just sort of gave him everything I learned from my own job search. At the end of the day, it didn't look like it was going to work out, and he had to go back to India. But fortunately, he got a job at Google, which is really awesome, and he kind of moved to California out of it. And honestly, I'm just so happy that whole thing happened. That like he was able to get the thing he wanted out of it, and that happened because we were able to meet during the meetup. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Leah might have been my little mentee at one point. I remember her first, I think it was her first time we met at this meetup, and she was just learning UX, and she was just trying to get to know the industry a little bit better. So I kind of offered to help. Look at her, she's like a beautiful like co-organizer now. But I was probably one of those people that told her you got to move to New York or Atlanta. My bad.
Probably, but
so that might have been me. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we've done a lot of things together. We did we did something for the meetup where we did a survey to figure out it's personas for the UX meetup. And then we also did a hackathon together as well. So we've done quite a few things. We wouldn't have met if it wasn't for this meetup. So pretty happy.
Yeah, it's cool that we're able to kind of take, like, again, just like meeting here and then seeing each other like over and over again and being like, you know what, we need to continue this, extend this outside of the meetup too. So it's really, again, like someone mentioned it earlier, it's cool to be able to just like work and collaborate with people that you wouldn't normally work and collaborate with. So
yeah, we also went to the AIGA meetup or something like that.
I don't know which one it was.
Was it the community meeting?
Probably, and we realized that wasn't for us. Sorry, Avery.
That's fine.
They're like, where are the UX designers at?
Great. Are there any other answers for favorite memorable mentor-mentee moments?
So, go ahead, Jason.
I would say just as a quick thing, I feel like framing it as a mentor-mentee situation, I feel like there's so many people that we meet at every single meetup that are at so many different stages in their career. We've got everything from students to people who are in the middle of a transition into a UX field or just want to learn more about the field from a different side, like maybe they're an engineer. And so I think it's really just about making connections and finding peers and sharing experiences. And then, you get those situations where, somebody found an awesome job, out of that, or they found the next step in their career, and that's always really exciting. it's hard to pinpoint a specific example, but just kind of tying together all the different people that are in all the different stages of their career always results in good things.
Yeah, it's the connections, I think, that are the most helpful. And I think you could say that's one of the biggest benefits of the meetup. But I was going to say, for like myself personally, I met Wes through this meetup. And when I first started taking on some like design leadership responsibilities, I actually asked Wes to help mentor me. We're meeting at a coffee shop every month for a good while, and just kind of being able to discuss and learn from his experience was amazing, honestly. Yeah, I mean, that was before he was a co-organizer and all that, but that was like a really cool connection that turned into a great friendship.
Yeah, I think the friendships that we get out of all of this, it goes beyond like mentor and mentee. And like, I think when me and Matt were talking, I'm like, no, what are you talking about? We're just friends. We're just having coffee, man. And I still have something like taped up on my desk from like one of those early conversations that Matt drew. So who was guiding who there? And, you know, I think about recent that a lot of us, he's not here, I don't think tonight, but Christian Lang, I don't know how many of you all remember him. There's a couple of Christians that have been to our gigs, and Christian just got a job, landed a job that he really was looking forward to, and he moved, right? So he's moved out of the Central Florida area, which is kind of a bummer, but we all, you know, have our evolution. And to me, it was cool to see somebody coming like on that early piece of the journey and see where he's at right now, right? Like he's right there and he's calling, and I'm sure he's called all of us, or many of us, and ask questions going through that like interview process and the offer, and did I do the right thing? And it's cool to know that he's not just relying on my voice. It's cool to know that he's talking to other people and that we're all available, whether we're organizers or co-organizers or whatever. It's cool to see that. I just think that's really, really awesome to know that we brought all of us together. That was an outlet for folks like Christian to be able to take that next step in his career, which is exciting.
It's funny because those connections happen outside the talk. You know, whatever the talk is, it's always great, and we always learn things from whatever the topic is that we're covering or the workshop that we have. But it's always like the few minutes before the meeting, and then the few minutes after the meeting while we're hanging out, or the DOUX meetup that we head to afterwards, which we'll talk about more, I'm sure, in the future, where those connections are made. So, you know, we come together, like the content is the bait that gets people to come and learn something, and then they end up making connections that are helping people move forward in their career, which is awesome.
I love that, Jason. That's cool.
Absolutely. Great point. So the next question that we have, which DOUX meetup event is your favorite or most memorable?
I can take a stab at this one. When I was still around as a co-organizer, we actually had this meetup series in which we talked about UX as a career. And this was actually at Christian Ratterman's place, where the co-organizers and some of the participants got together. And it was a really great UX moment in that it wasn't just we as the co-organizers getting together and understanding like, hey, what do we want to talk about? It was also about from our attendees, from our friends, what are they kind of hoping to get out of this meetup? One of the topics is actually, how do you get into the UX field? And that was the meetup where I did a talk on how I actually got into the UX field. Long story short, what I hoped was that for the attendees there, I hoped that they realized that there's no single way to get into UX. Everyone has their own awesome story of how they really empathize with the users that they design for. And in that way, it's also kind of free form in that you're carving your own path. You're really understanding what works for me, what field Like, what does the UX field mean to me exactly? And how can I use my skills to connect people to experiences, and more importantly, connecting people to other people?
Awesome. That's really cool.
I think for me,
Matt?
the funnest one was when we did that practice. I think it was like developing like the user, and then we were doing like writing, like drawing little characters or something, like little pictures. That was cool. That was dope.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones, one of my earliest and favorite, was one that Matt, you were leading, where you actually had us took us through like a user's experience, and you took it outside of the screen. And I think it was an airport was the example, like just the experience of checking into an airport, and go through all the different touch points and where you can improve in those areas. And it just really kind of helped click things for me when it came to like user-centric design.
Yeah. When we were talking about blueprinting, like, yeah, that was cool. I was really trying to come up with a good answer for this one, and I don't feel like I have a great answer because I've liked so many of them. I mean, even the very first meetup that we had ever, literally we were doing basically an IDEO, like, or was it a D-School design challenge, except it was framed around designing the meetup itself. So we like interviewed each other and went through this whole design thinking exercise to design our meetup. And that was the very first meetup of this whole, well, I mean, it was called DOUX back in the day, but this whole DOUX thing. My favorite kind of recurring meetups is actually the presentation karaoke. It's not necessarily something where we're like getting together and learning about UX, but something that's so important for all of us in our jobs is like being able to speak and be comfortable in front of others and give good, compelling presentations, like tell good stories. And for those of you that don't know, presentation karaoke is where you get 5 random slides. You've never seen them before. They come up as you're clicking next, and you have to give a presentation. You pick your topic ahead of time. And I think, I don't know, we'll probably do it again, maybe in like December or something to keep our annual tradition. But I think that's one of my favorites, is just like having that exercise. And there's something that's really nice about like getting the community together, us all like laughing at the silly moments together, that kind of stuff.
It's been like 2 years, but I still remember Selena's talk on what is a sandwich.
It's a sandwich.
The people at that merchant would never let it go. Like, they were like, "You're the bread girl," and I'm like, "Oh God." Yeah, I just know all my breads, I guess.
So I've got a couple. It's hard to nail it down, but there is the one that Charles Caldwell did around the Kano method. I don't know how people like to pronounce that, but Charles is with Nielsen Group, and they use that method a lot. And the reason that I call that one out is because, one, Matt wore just about every hat in that one. He played a bunch of characters while Charles was going through the story, and he was very animated and kind of took you into the spot of each of these individuals as Charles told the story. Then also we did do breakouts, and that's one of the things about not just that specific one, but having the breakout moments where, like, you know, Arnardo, you talked about like how you really liked being able to do the drawings, but in the Kano method, we walked around and interviewed people. And, you know, when we've managed to be very interactive. It's so recent as, dare I say, one that Leah and I participated in. That one that we did digitally was really cool, and it was stuff that we apply every day. And I just really liked that. And I do love also, I know I'm going long-winded here a little bit, but I do also like, earlier Matt mentioned before you joined, Jasmine, that he did kind of say that he really loved that one. And I know Avery said that he really enjoyed your presentation, and that we are open to having people come from outside our community too. And it's great that you're participating from outside Central Florida, and that you still are enjoying coming or are willing to come, I guess. And so to me, that, I know it's not just one, but that it starts with that Charles one and why. I think it's the kind of the elixir, if you will, of everything that makes goodness out of DOUX.
Thank you. Really quick, I haven't come to a whole bunch of these because I don't live in the Orlando area, but just hearing you talk about the different kinds of different themes that you've looked into, different kinds of meetups that you've done, it makes me really sad that I couldn't go to it. I don't know what the bread thing is about, but it seems great, and I really want to be a part of that.
I could do a whole, I can try it again. It won't be as good as the first one, but.
Presentation karaoke will be virtual this year, I'm sure. So
Yeah,
you'll get to experience it.
Yeah, look out for karaoke.
Oh, I was gonna say, I threw a picture of that. I scrolled back. That Kano model was February 16th, 2016, Wes. That's crazy. But yeah, I was putting on different hats as I was playing different parts of Charles's story.
It was wild because you didn't know what hat to pull, and you were like, okay, this hat, I've got this one. And we're like, why do you even have all of these? This is silly. And it's a Power DMS history thing, but it was cool that you had all of that.
Sounds like dinner theater.
Yeah, it definitely.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even touch on DOUX days, right? So I don't know if we will later or not, but those were pretty exciting too.
Leah, I think you were about to say something a while ago.
Yeah, for me, the most memorable, I kind of want to go back to the one that Selena was talking about. Because before I was a co-organizer, and it was the workshop for creating personas. And I forget exactly what it originally was. I think we were just, I think maybe Matt, you were maybe just talking about how a persona is born, and then people were kind of just making up their own. But what we did was we kind of took it a next step, and again, extended that meetup. And what we ended up doing was creating a more of a realistic persona based on people who attend the meetups. So it was really cool because it was me, Selena, and Minsun, and we actually got to, I know we put together surveys. I know we were meeting up at coffee shops and staying up way too late. And I know we did a couple of interviews too, organizer interviews. So it was cool to like actually do something like in the real world, collecting real data. And yeah, it was really awesome to be able to practice those kinds of things.
That's great. Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next question. So we've talked a lot about how to get into UX. What are some mistakes to avoid in trying to break into the field? And I'm going to ask Abhishek if you can answer this one first.
I feel like if there are probably like mistakes bigger than what I think, I'm probably doing them right now. But I guess sidestepping that conversation for a second, I don't know if these are mistakes. These just felt like things that I wanted to be really cognizant about when I was starting at Power DMS and also as a designer. So I'm going to try to pivot into that question. So one of the things I felt very strongly, so in school, I had a lot of friends who were all going off to different companies, and it felt like everyone had a very clear picture of what they wanted to be inside of the space of UX. So they had a very clear idea that they're going to go be a user researcher or a prototyper or someone who's going to be specifically a visual designer, but not anything else. So I felt like that line of thinking was probably not something that I could really get behind, because I liked all of the different things that UX was, and my hope was, can I find something that'll kind of let me do a little bit of everything? So maybe down the line, I could come to love one thing and I would be an expert in that. But I generally just felt better being a generalist. And then at Power DMS and working with Matt, we used to have a lot of conversations about this. And I think it just reinforced that I think being a generalist is probably more valuable, at least what I am for now. But I think my sort of things, like if someone is trying to break into UX, what I would recommend is genuinely try to find a role that lets you do a little bit of everything, all the parts that you like doing. So you can honestly like forestall the decision of trying to be an expert on one thing. if at all forever, but hopefully for 5 or 10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have to say that UX as an industry didn't exist when I first started working as a designer. And it wasn't really until the invention of the iPhone that, we had to start considering things from more of an interactive standpoint, and just taking kind of the general knowledge of the design basics of typography and hierarchy and storytelling, things like that, and then applying that into UX really kind of helped me transition those thought patterns a lot. So,
yeah.
Anyone else?
Kind of piggyback off of Abhishek's answer about being open to being a generalist. I feel like because UX is a career field that is new for a lot of people, it's a career field that a lot of people transition to from other roles. I think the one thing people shouldn't forget is that they should lean on their past experience, because everybody brings something to their job that nobody else has. And so if you're coming from a development background, if you're coming from a graphic design background, if you're coming from, there's so many different feeder fields, industrial design into UX, lean on your strengths. I had a mentorship call with somebody that was kind of transitioning from the marketing side into UX, and was very interested in conversions and KPI and things like that. And it's like, that is totally something you can rely on. And more and more often I'm seeing roles where people are opening up UX roles for the marketing side of a product company. And so, I think that there's so many opportunities when focusing on products to get narrowly focused on a specific area or a specific specialization within UX. But not forgetting the past experience you have and the strengths you have, even as a student, that you can rely on is probably the biggest mistake you can make when trying to get into the field.
Very good. If I can think of something from what I've seen with designers is UX still runs on the web, right? And it has a lot of code running behind it. I work with many designers who kind of like not shy away, but like push away code. I don't want to think about it or anything like that. But a lot of what we do has code in it, right? It flows through code, text flows through this. And a lot of times I work with designers that don't have at least that basic understanding of it, make a lot of design mistakes that when it gets implemented becomes a problem. So that's one thing that I definitely encourage designers to at least understand the structure of code, especially how fast and how far CSS has gone from the table dates, And that's something that I try to teach, because sometimes if they don't know, they might not know how far they can push it. But some people, you just gotta understand it and not really know it all the way in, but at least have a basic understanding of it. I think that's a mistake.
I've got one that I think Matt will smile about is, don't pretend that you know it all, that you need to listen to the user, right? And I knew Matt would smile at that one. But another one is jumping straight into like the high fidelity concept design, and it's like, okay, I can make this thing look perfect right away. I think you can save yourself a lot of time by not getting that far. If you have the right design system, it can help you. But there are a lot of new designers that just start with the high fidelity mockups and kind of skip that step of maybe sitting down and drawing what they're thinking about, sketching it out, and then going through the flows. And there's a lot to be said and valued that helps you ideate. That if you get stuck in the tech, like that's the challenge with Axure, Matt, right? I love Axure, but some people get stuck in the tech, right? You watch them and they're like figuring out all this awesome stuff this tool can do, and they're not really solving the design problem, right? Which is interesting. So
yeah, writing down and like defining your problem statement, like this is what I'm actually trying to do here, this is the outcome of this design challenge, is really, really helpful.
Absolutely. And it's also very useful for, as Matt can attest, when you're running a community or something like that, just kind of figuring out what value you're bringing to it for the end user or your customer or the person who's attending. So, Okay, great. So next question we have, and I'll open this up to anyone in the meeting who wants to answer this one. But what do you miss most about meeting in person?
Definitely the human interaction. I miss seeing everybody in person. For sure. Oh, and DOUX. That sucks. That sucks.
Yeah, the social UX.
Yeah, those are great.
Miss a good Domino's pizza, you know, and beer.
Beer and pizza, that's right.
Tech system, that's tech system coming through, right?
Yeah.
As the general non-UX person that attends this meetup, really just enjoyed talking with all of you guys so much more. Like, we get to talk a little bit at the end, but it was so different at DOUX. Just so getting to hear your perspective on things, and that always allowed me to bring different things back to my job. So I miss that.
Amy, I don't feel like you're a non-UX person by any
Good.
I've been adopted by your community.
I think you were always part of it.
One of us.
Well, Leah mentioned about doing that exercise about the user personas and how you got together and developed it. That's something I just side story. I want to do more of that. I think that was awesome. I wanted to join you guys, but I didn't get a chance. I had like 10,000 meetings and stuff. But I definitely would like to do more of that. I think that was super cool. Like if we can focus on just like user persona development or user research in particular, because there's sometimes there's certain parts of the English or our skill set, right, our career, as you growing and you focus more into an area, like you don't get a chance to go learn it. So that the way we can do that here is amazing.
Yeah, I miss the workshops. Like we did, you know, Wes and Leo actually ran, I think, the best feedback workshop I have ever experienced in my life. That was awesome, and it was all digital. And it actually really helped with like the digital tooling of that. But yeah, there's something about like when we've run workshops where we've just, you know, I've got my kit and caboodle of Post-it notes and pieces of paper and poster boards, and we just get together and we're like, whether it's personas or storyboarding or journey mapping or whatever, like there's something that's really energizing about like breaking into small groups, you know, learning about like a tool in the UX toolbox, breaking into small groups, having the challenge, going through it together, even if it's all like, you know, just a small like kind of piece of what that might actually be like in real life. Like there's something about doing that together that's really nice.
Yeah.
Of course, sucks. I definitely miss sucks.
You can't build something with toothpicks and marshmallows virtually. It doesn't work out so well. that was one of the more memorable, like hands-on collaborative workshop.
That was one of my favorite activities. Yeah.
That was Amy's, right?
Yeah.
Yep. With the spaghetti sticks and the marshmallows.
Yep.
Awesome.
Sometimes you gotta play at work in order to learn things.
Yeah, I'll never forget that team that cheated and lost.
The ones that took the extra supplies.
Jason will
One
deny
of them
that.
messed up. They're like, so hey, I don't know if we were supposed to do this. I'm like, no, you weren't.
Does that mean we don't win? Yes, that means you don't win.
I at least liked the honesty.
Janae, is there anything that you miss most about meeting in person?
I think it's everything that folks have said. I just really enjoyed being able to run some of the workshops and even be able to partner with other groups. I mean, it's hard to do that for obvious reasons, but when I was around, we had a joint meetup between DOUX and the IoT meetup. And it's hard to do that these days. It's hard to kind of broker those partnerships. You can't really do those kinds of workshops virtually unless you have a lot of people who know how to use the remote tools and know how to use Zoom that well.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because we've been having some conversations on and off about combining multiple meetups from multiple cities in Florida into one big meetup sometime in the future.
Like UX meetups specifically in the Southeast. It would be cool to do a joint something or other.
Yeah, I know there's SoFlux right now too, right? That also does like South Florida UX. But yeah, it's a good time for collaboration for sure. Alrighty, so next up. So, been talking about sucks a lot. What's the best story you've ever heard while hanging out after an event?
Best story.
Does this have to be UX related?
I don't think so. I think best story, you know, something that just really stands out in your mind.
There was a time where Lady Gaga was in town, and I'm like the biggest Lady Gaga fan. And some drunk guy was just like, just going about Lady Gaga. And I was like, I would know she's in town. Like, I would know. And she was doing a private event at the Amway. And I was like, okay, I think Leah was with me. I was like, we're going to go out all night and we're going to find Lady Gaga.
I was debating whether the story would be appropriate for this.
I was like, she has to go out. She has to party, right? We're going to stay out. We're going to find her. It was just a weird moment. Like, this guy just came into the bar. He was just like talking about how I saw Lady Gaga, da 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 da. And we're like, what are you talking about in Orlando? And so, yeah, that was like a whole thing. And we were going to have a whole adventure that night. I was really pressuring like everyone on an adventure to find Lady Gaga in Orlando. We did it. We all went home. But I think that's the most memorable, crazy moment.
That had me at the edge of my seat. I was like, did you find her? Were there any like near misses where like you distant, far away person kind of looked like?
I think I went home because the next day at launch that we had our own convention. We have like a lot of speakers, and it was like an all-day event. And I know it's gonna be extremely tired if I did this thing. So I was like conserving energy to like make it to work the next day.
Yeah,
you ended up at Hamburger Mary's, and it was actually just a drag queen. You're like, wait, no. It's like
Google it. She was in town, and I was like, wow, this guy's for real. I think it was like one of those credit card companies. Like they were having like a convention center, like at Amway, and it was sold out. And she was doing like a private event, and I was like, my
it was
goodness.
like a secret show. That the person passing by said something about like, have you heard about the secret Lady Gaga?
Yeah, he made it so like underground. I was like, no, you tell me about it at the Amway. That's not so secretive. It's at the Amway.
So one of them that I can think of that isn't as exciting as Lady Gaga, but what's the little bar that we would meet at right across from Power DMS area, the little small place?
Tap and grind.
Tap and grind.
Tap and grind. So we would go in there, and it was really strange because you'd be hanging out talking, and then every now and then, like a couple of people would walk in or stagger in, like they had been somewhere else, but then they would walk past, not buy anything or say anything, and go into the bathroom. And you're like, what is going on, right? You're like, is there something, unscrupulous going on there? Well, no. Anyone that's been to Tap and Grind knows that there are 2 light switches in the bathrooms, and if you turn one of them off, it's a black light, and the tiles give you a different message if you only have the black light on. So people would go in there just to see the tile on the walls of the bathroom, and they would just happen to have been having a good time that night while they were deciding to do that. I thought that was
they were really cool bathrooms, to be fair, but also RIP Tap and Grind.
Yeah. Yes,
Make it, huh?
Yeah, that's one of the things about hanging out in downtown after a meetup is you never know what's going to happen, because sometimes there's big events happening in downtown, and we might end up going to 3 different bars before we find a place where there's room to hang out. And then we're always the nerdy group of UXers, like standing around having beers. People are like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, I think we eventually found like a pretty good rhythm with that Irish pub, but yeah, it was always tricky finding the place where like the noise levels wouldn't be too much and it was close enough for everybody to walk. And yeah, there's like a strange set of constraints on that design challenge.
There was one social UX that we were at, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was in town from North Carolina, and I think he worked at like the building, like at Pro Staff, something like that. But he was their director of UX, and he saw one of us wearing like a UX shirt or something. He's like, "What do you guys do?" And we started talking to him. I think his name was Brad, and but that was kind of a cool connection that like he kind of didn't expect to run into a group of people that did UX, and he's like, "Wow, that was really, it was just a cool coincidence."
Very cool.
That was the
Nice.
designer from the benefits company in the same building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ProStat? I can't remember what it's called.
No.
Plan source.
Plan source.
Plan
yeah.
Source.
Yeah.
And I think he ended up coming to the event, maybe, or maybe just hung out afterwards. But
Yeah, I don't know.
Awesome. All right, moving on. The next question is, how do you decide on topics for the meetup? So what is the thought process when you're planning a Do UX meetup, how you decide what you're going to focus on, whether it's going to be a workshop or a talk or what have you?
I can give a very in-depth answer to this question. So Janae actually mentioned earlier, we've done things that are called series. So I think we've done 2 different long-running series. One was the one that Janae mentioned on like kind of design leadership and growing your UX career. The first series that we ever did was actually pretty on in our history, and that was just on like introduction to the tools of like UX. And I can't remember if we've done a third one or not, but I think that's it. But so when we do those series, we try to pick out topics that make sense, and you know, you can sometimes reorganize the topics and they'll still make sense, but sort of like something that builds on itself. But then you also have to accommodate in a way where people like jump in at any point into the series and also be like helpful and beneficial for them. So like in our first series, it was like, you know, personas and wireframing and user flow diagrams, you know, like going through those kinds of things. The other way that we arrive at topics is honestly like things that we're interested in, things that are hot topics in the news or in the UX community at large or anything like that, or things that speakers are passionate about. So a lot of times we typically like to, you know, let our speakers talk about anything that they're interested in. But I will say it's challenging finding speakers. And so I know, you know, we've got a pretty great group of folks on here tonight, and many of you have spoken, but for any of you that haven't, if you've ever thought about it, don't sell yourself short. Remember, I was selling myself short for a long time, and it was when I finally like stopped listening to that voice in my head was when I started this meetup to begin with. Because I was like, who am I to start a meetup? Well, yeah, I did it, and it happened, and here we are 6 years later. Like, who are you to speak at this meetup? You're you. You are you, and you can teach us something. And I would love to have you join us and help us to learn. And yeah, so I don't know. I rambled for a little bit there. As far as types of meetups, we like to mix it up. I really like to encourage people to try workshop formats because I think those are really engaging and helpful for people to learn. But presentations are also great. I also love the community events. We usually, to be totally honest, we usually have the community style events when we're just like not certain what we're going to do for the month. We're like, we need to get something on the books. So like, let's do a book club. Let's find an interesting UX article that we can discuss in the meetup. Let's, you know, do a presentation karaoke. The first time we did that was like, what are we going to do December 2015? You know, like let's throw a presentation karaoke on there. So yeah, I don't know. What else would y'all add? Anybody else on the organizers group have anything to throw in about that question?
yeah, just piggybacking on that, and like really, I mean, I think that's the hardest part about keeping a meetup going is keeping content coming. And I think we kind of cycle through the different types of meetups, different topics. For a while there, we were meeting either weekly or bi-weekly at a coffee shop to chat about potential topic ideas, but always open to the community, always looking for speakers that are interested in speaking to the group, always, always looking for people outside of our community that might be able to come in. We've had some of those as well, which is always awesome. But like Matt said, if anybody in the community is interested in giving a talk on a topic, I've always said that I feel like everybody could talk about something that they do for 45 minutes and teach us something. So if you are passionate about something that ties into UX that you think the UX community would learn from, we're always looking for volunteers to come speak.
I would also add that if it is really scary, in the past, when I was part of the DOUX meetup, back when it was called DOUX, we also had lightning talks. And so that was also a really great way to just dip your toe in and just do 15 minutes of a lightning talk. Don't really need to think about it. Almost anyone can come up with something that they can talk about for 15 minutes. And the challenging part is keeping it within those 15 minutes. So there are plenty of ways to just get involved. It's not just about what folks are interested in learning about, but also what folks are wanting to give in those minutes of time.
Yeah, we haven't done lightning talks, I think, since you left, Janae, but if anybody's interested in speaking and doesn't think they can fill a 45-minute talk, just reach out and tell us, like, hey, I want to do a lightning talk, and then we'll make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. For anybody who likes like the figures, in our history, in our 6 years, we've done 32 presentation style meetups, 19 workshops, 8 community style events, 6 panels, 2 conferences, 2 presentation. For some reason I spelled presentation wrong, so it's counting it as different. So add 2 more to the presentation, and we've done 4 brew events. That was like the AM events that we had going for a little while before all of this virtual world happened. In the past 12 months, 4 workshops, 3 community style events, 3 presentations, and 1 brew. So there you go.
Very cool. Okay, so the next question, since you brought up conferences, DOUX Day is an all-day event for the Central Florida design community. Do you think you'll do it again? And I will ask this of Leah. Answer first. Oh, you're muted.
I was gonna say I surely can't speak to the original DOUX Day. That was before my time. But yeah, I know we've been talking recently about ways we can have another conference type event. I think I can't even remember where we last left off with that conversation. I know we were talking about maybe finding like notable people, notable designers in Florida, not just Orlando, maybe reaching out to, other, South Florida, Tampa too. We've been in connection with meetups there. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's definitely on our minds. I don't know that we have anything down on paper officially.
Avery, you're on mute.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I was just saying, I feel your pain with AIG Orlando trying to organize any kind of event during a lockdown is just super difficult. I will say it's interesting all the different forms that conferences have been taking with kind of like Citrus Space and Adobe Max being kind of like a streaming type conference, where some are more like Zoom with breakouts styles. So, and others are more broken apart where they stretch them out. Instead of one full day, they actually have like, an hour or 2 a day of programming. So.
Yeah, I really love to do another day event. I like every time we've done it, we've sort of had a theme, and we've had it like, you know, like the very first one we did was all on prototyping. So like in the morning we were talking about paper prototyping and purpose and all that, and then the afternoon was all kind of breakout workshops where you could choose what type of prototyping tool you wanted to learn about, whether it was like Axure or Figma or Sketch, or I forget what all we had back in the time. But yeah, like I think doing another day conference style event would be really cool. But I would say kind of with like motivation and our ability to like pour into this meetup, I think it's probably gonna be continuing as just our focusing on our monthly events for now, would be my guess, until we're out of the waters where sometimes it's hard to stay motivated, y'all.
Totes. Yeah, and screen fatigue. And you, yeah, you mix that with screen fatigue, and then yeah.
Sometimes you just have to carve a pumpkin, man.
Step away and carve pumpkins.
All right. There's no other answers. So how have you seen the UX community in Central Florida change since DOUX started 6 years ago? And I'll direct this one to Abhishek.
So I've only been here for about 3 years, but I can definitely talk about how I feel it's changed over 3 years. I honestly feel more connected to more members of the community now than ever before. Like Avery, I met you through, I mean, it wasn't through Downtown UX, it was through an AIGA meetup. But I mean, we've been in connection since then. And I've got to meet so many other people along the way who are designers, like Arun, who is a voice designer, David Yardy, who was also another designer. So it's been great to meet so many people. So I feel like my own perception of the community has grown much larger. And I would have to attribute some of that to having events like DOUX and many others that like bring people together. I feel like that is helping quite a bit. As far as I think the bigger community, I think we on the DOUX are trying to do sort of our best to make the community larger, like allow people to meet each other as part of the community. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. I don't think any of us are like done with building the community yet. So I do hope to see more people in the future. So it has improved, I feel like, quite a bit, but I also feel like there is so much more we can do here that's in front of us.
I don't know from where it started, but I can tell kind of like what it's doing. It's keeping our community together. See, we're here, it's our community. We have had a lot of different UX kind of meetups come up, right, and go, but this one's still here. And that's very important. It's the only one that is keep it.
Yeah, speaking to this one, I don't know if it's just because I've grown as a UX designer, but I feel like there's a lot more and a lot more varied UX communities in the Orlando area, or even like tech focused meetups. I know that I've learned about BOT, I think, Black Orlando Tech, through David Yard, who's also a connection I made through DOUX and AIJ Orlando. And I just think it's just really, inspiring that, we have like conferences like OIX and stuff in Digital Orlando that are happening also here, talking about kind of the future of augmented reality and virtual reality. And I feel like that has changed, or that's become a lot more prevalent in the last 6 years for sure.
Yeah, I feel like for the size of our city, Orlando has a bigger group of passionate people that are willing to and excited about being a part of design and tech communities. And so, we've talked about meetups that have kind of come and gone, but there's been more that have come as a result of that. You talked about like different types of meetups that have started, like an accessibility focused meetup started recently in Orlando. And there's, I feel like we talk about cities like New York and Atlanta, having a bigger community scene, but for the per capita, we've got more people that are involved in communities and speaking to their communities about what they're learning about their field, which is great. I love to see it, and it just keeps changing and evolving, and that's great to see too.
Well, something else too is General Assembly now is in Orlando, and then UCF now has a UX program. So it seems like education, in general, is becoming more accessible here too. So that's pretty cool. And I feel like it's only going to continue to grow because of that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, final question. You kind of touched on this earlier. How can others get involved with DOUX or in other ways in the Meetup community?
Come speak. I know when we're in this virtual time as well, in particular, it seems like it would be super easy and maybe even tempting to try to find larger speakers and bring people in. And we've connected with some pretty amazing speakers, and we've brought people in. In fact, I know Wes mentioned this, but Jasmine, your talk, I listed it as the best talk or the best DOUX event of 2020 was how we were talking about it earlier in the before people were getting on. And you're from outside of our community. We didn't know you from Orlando, but now you're a part of it. And we brought in other people that are not necessarily becoming part of our communities, but cool speakers that we've had an awesome opportunity to have. But regardless of us being virtual, and really regardless of us if you're here in Orlando or part of this community at heart, people that are a member of this community care about it. Having y'all speak, I think, is much more meaningful to me than it would be super cool to have Jared Spool speak, but I would just as much want you to speak. You know what I mean? It's really important to me that we as the community kind of continue to work and educate and uplift each other. So yeah, I'd love to see more of y'all kind of get engaged and bring your ideas of things that maybe something that you want to learn. Put it on the books for an upcoming month for the meetup, and it's going to force you to put your nose to the grindstone and really learn it. And I've learned a lot that way, I will tell you.
There's one question I do have for the community before we go is, there's a lot of UX professionals in this city that don't engage in these meetups and stuff like that. For example, Matthew Gallagher is here in Orlando. It's tremendous, he got 30 years in design, and he lives over there at Wyndham. And it's I would love to get some of those people to come speak to us, but I never can convince them. What do you think is a good way to get those folks who are in our industry here, but they just don't engage, to maybe come join us, something like that?
Domino pizza.
Chicken pie?
maybe there's a topic that you could do with them.
Okay.
Right?
That's
Say,
good.
hey, I would love to do this with you if you would be willing. Say, I am not really an expert at it, but I want to talk about it and learn more. And if I do it with you, I think it's a good opportunity for me to be able to build on that. It does. That is something that is a little bit of a tier, right? Because I know I've worked with people in other companies, and they're, it's more than a handful of folks that are doing UX in Central Florida that I know that I've worked with, that they don't come to any events. It's not just this one. It's just life goes on, and it's a gig, and they enjoy what they do, but there is a level of passion that Jason touched on that is special. That is something that's about most of the people, everyone that's here tonight, but also many of the people that come to our events. It's not I'm guilty of when I first started attending meetups that it was self-serving because I wanted to recruit people, right? Like I was trying to see who was out there that could that we could hire, but it became more than that. And I think once people can make that connection, if they have time, you know, like Jason touched on, raising young children in Atlanta, I'm sure it was a lot more challenging, right? So we all have different things, but definitely if you know somebody, getting involved with them is a good way of baiting them in. Right, Jasmine?
That's Anarda, that's a big thing we talk about, not just individuals that we'd like to come speak, but you know, companies that we'd love to have come represent at the meetup. Like we've got Disney, we've got Universal. Like that was actually how we ended up deciding to bring in Corey Puffer from Universal to come talk about accessibility. Was we were, you know, who from Universal could we bring in to speak about a topic? It's like, oh, well, I know this one person, you know, like, and so we'd like to get some of those bigger organizations that hire for UX, because it's not just about, you know, creating network and creating and teaching people about UX. It's also connecting jobs to people, like connecting possible career opportunities with people who are looking for career opportunities too. So, you know, we want to connect those bigger organizations. But I think a lot of those people that are in those bigger organizations are, you know, they focus on the job during the day, and, you know, they have family, they have other reasons why they can't come out to a meetup at night. But I mean, especially during a time like this where we're virtual, it's a lower bar to have to come than have to come downtown for an event. So we could definitely keep thinking about that and keep thinking about, you know, what organizations do you want to hear from, about how UX works there. And they may not be able to talk about that specifically. Maybe they can talk about some specialization within UX that they can talk generally about. But yeah, it's definitely a topic we talk about when trying to come up with speakers.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be original though. We all have a different take on things. I think back to one of the design system talks, and it was really heavy on like the coded design system and how they were implementing it in their very specific environment. What it did is it stimulated thought, right? It got us thinking about, oh, that's a different approach than maybe my organization is taking. And, you know, it gets you looking around at what's going on. So I love hearing people talk about the way they do it, not necessarily the way it should be done.
That's good.
Another good way, if you have connections and know people that are in our community and you think it'd be great to have them speak at DUX, kind of another way to lower the bar is panels. So like we've had a lot of really phenomenal panels, whether we're talking about, you know, we had one with like folks that work in like VR and AR. We've had one on ethics. We've had a lot of like really interesting panels over the past 6 years. And that's great because you don't have to prepare a slide deck. You don't really have to even think about it. You can just show up and join the conversation as a panelist. Like, you know, maybe look at the questions ahead of time, whatever. But yeah, I mean, if you know people that, you know, we can like as a community connect with and pull together, like us organizers only know, you know, who we know and are only kind of thinking about the things we might be thinking about. So throw those ideas in there and help us.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Cause like that, the panel idea is really good to make a panel like that. I know Matthew, for example, talks a lot about design at scale, right? Mm-hmm. And that thought leadership is like super important in the organization. It's like a lot of times we get bogged down by little things, and he like gets us out of that and goes like, scale. And that'd be awesome to bring to a panel and listen to that thought leadership by that. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would also add that when you have folks who are not really ready to engage in the community, it also helps that you can invite them as, hey, why don't you come with me? And in that way, it's certainly less pressure on them to just go to this completely new event. And in terms of just being able to further engage with the community, Matt has touched on this in his conversations with Wes. I've also looked to Wes in terms of just getting feedback and advice. I've looked to Matt as well for feedback and advice. So just being there for others and saying like, this is what worked for me, or this is what I would recommend for you. this is, all of us are kind of in our different points of our careers. So it's just a really great way to share on what has worked and what hasn't.
By the way, another interesting twist to Janae, I don't know if she even knows this, but back in a couple of previous jobs ago, when I would talk to people, they would ask about like, hey, what should I have on my resume? What should it look like? What should my portfolio look like? And I randomly came across Janae's resume and portfolio out there looking for examples. And I used hers as an example of like, this is a great way that you should do things. And then I'm like, hey, you're at our meetup. That's amazing. So I don't know if you know I did that, but.
Awesome. Well, that was the last question. Unless anyone has any other thoughts, I can pass the proverbial talking stick back over to Matt. I could still share my screen if that's easier, but if you just want to walk us through.
No, I can go ahead and I just got pulled back up to the right slide. Here we go. So speaking of jobs, it is time for community announcements. As you all know, every single month we have community announcements. Any meetups that you are aware of that we should go to? I know Adobe is running their conference that was mentioned earlier. Also, at the top of the announcements here, I'm also going to mention, if you look over in chat, there's a survey. So if there was any kind of thoughts that maybe we didn't touch on that you didn't share your thoughts on, it'd be really, honestly, really helpful if you could click on that survey and fill it out. And we'll share that over in Slack as well. But that would be awesome. So yeah, who's hiring? What's happening? What's going on?
Hey, before we go into that, and maybe you were going to do it anyway, but we were talking about panels. And one of the other challenging pieces of a panel is having someone that leads that panel. And I'd love for everybody to give Avery a big round of applause for keeping us moving, for volunteering his time. Avery, thank you very much. You did an amazing job, as always. Highly impressive. Love that you're a part of our community. And thanks again, man.
Oh, well, thank you. Once again, it was an honor to help celebrate such an amazing meetup and an amazing community.
Thanks, Avery.
Sure
Yeah,
thing.
definitely. Thanks. And thanks for reminding me to thank Avery, Wes.
I'm sure you were going to get to it, but I wanted to do that front and center because we were just talking about panels. So I wanted to tie it in.
Yeah, anybody have any announcements? Anything going on?
Yes, I have an announcement. So my team is actually hiring. We are looking for senior product designers and senior service designers. We're looking for folks who have 3 to 6 years of experience. So I came from UX and came into product design, but we're really looking for folks who are really passionate about user research, really going from user research to visual design. These positions are open to remote, so feel free to hit me up if you are interested. Oh, and of course, forgetting this, sorry, my pet hedgehog has been distracting me. My husband was trying to get me to hold her, so there she is. More importantly, with this community announcement, as I'm trying to hold my hedgehog here, my team is Humana. We're actually changing the company from health insurance into healthcare delivery. So if you're really passionate about healthcare, if you're really interested in learning more, you can go to humana.io to learn more about the team. Thank you, Wes. I think he put in my LinkedIn. So also feel free to reach out.
Janae, is your hedgehog a pandemic pet, or have you had her for longer than that?
She is a great quarantine pet in that she doesn't like to be social. So she automatically social distances from everyone.
That's the same hedgehog you had when you lived down here, right?
Yeah,
I remember.
She's like 80 years old in hedgehog years. She's 4 now, so.
That's cute.
Awesome.
As far as possible opportunities, a friend of mine who actually met through Orlando Designers, his name is John Limbaugh. He runs a studio called Disruptive Studio. He's also the husband of a woman who owns the company Bahari. If anyone's familiar with it, they do like African print type of apparel. But he's looking for freelancers, looking for freelance designers. So anyone looking for like a freelance gig, sorry, I just realized I posted all that information privately to someone. Let me make sure that's in. There we go. So yeah, if you're interested in a freelance gig, feel free to reach out to him at disruptive.studio.
And I'll add that Cassie from our community also recently tweeted that Webflow, where she's at, is looking for a lead user researcher and senior product designer for growth. I'll post a link to that tweet too. I think she also shared it in the Orlando Designer Slack, which if you're not involved on there, even if you're not in Orlando, would encourage anybody to jump in and join the community there as well.
I've got an event that I'm actually going to be a part of. I'm trying to get the link in here. Next week, there's going to be a Women of UX in Florida talk. That's going to be hosted by General Assembly, but it's free. So check it out.
I'm
That's
curious what
awesome.
other conferences and events, if anybody else has heard about the Adobe one tonight. Is there any upcoming conferences that anyone's looking forward to?
I'm not sure who is into accessibility. I guess it's the conference next year, but if anyone would like to present like a paper or something, the UX AXCon, which is by AX, the Q University. So their call for papers ends this weekend. I know that's super short notice, but it's around accessibility. They're looking for people from all different backgrounds, especially people of color and other things. So if anyone would like to check it out, just go to AXCon or AX Conference to get more details on the paper.
That sounds really cool. And Abhishek, who isn't into accessibility? It's not an afterthought. It's part of the design practice.
Well, I should have prefaced that with someone is into talking about their knowledge of accessibility, then they can go to that.
Awesome. I also shared the link to the Orlando Designer Slack, just in case any of y'all aren't in there. But yeah, I know we ended up reminiscing for quite a while tonight, and this is a pretty kind of fun conversational meetup. I know usually we'll kind of move into